同时，姜教授现任可持续发展技术基金会理事长、北京大学环境基金会理事长、北京大学东北亚可持续发展与地区安全研究中心联合主任。这个他担任太多了。下面我们欢迎姜家四教授给大家做中国城市化与就业问题的报告。谢谢。
我问了那个会长，那个副会长说，今天用英文讲或者中文讲。
要不要这个还是
没关系，我用
没关系哈，因为我们人不多，20-30个人嘛，这个教室size。
那我用英文讲，我在美国待了50年 ，so I've been in the United States for 50 years, so it's not easy for me to speak Chinese. Even last 10 years, I was in China and which pick up a lot of Chinese, and as my student always comment. Say you better speak English much better than you speak Chinese, but I maybe use the English a little bit more. And today, which I'm going to actually is not give a lecture. I really would like to have a chance to have a dialogue and a discussion because I do have some of the idea about the so-called urbanization of China, which everybody know is a big deal. And I was the one actually. My lecture today actually is composed of 3 lectures. One I did in November and last year in Brussels, and which I think was quite a show because the president of the Finland was there too, all the European, and all the name of the conference maybe you're surprised. It's called World Security. World Security. The reason because the whole world is worried about the economic and the development, the climate change, economic development, and also the social inequity. So there are 3 crises over there. So worldwide, they have a World Security Conference. And I was the one over there to talk about what are the possibility we can provide the resolution to and face the challenge of the number 1, climate change, number 2, employment. And employment, I think worldwide is not only United States, and we increase the job and all those things. Unemployment is a big deal. I don't know you know or not, like in Europe, it's in really bad shape. And I was in Spain, and just a month ago, do you know what is the unemployment rate in Spain? 28%. Even in the Great Depression in the United States, that was 25%. 25%, which is people say that, but in Spain now is 28%. But anyway, I think unemployment is a very, very big issue. So today I would like to
all right, okay, thank you.
Talk about it is urbanization, which I think when I give a talk and in Brussels. At that moment, at that time, in China already have a so-called urbanization plan was in discussion. The reason I know that because I was in Beijing, Peking University, and you know the premier of China now, and he is from Peking University. He got PhD in the economy and in Peking University. So we collaborate, and so I do know what is the urbanization plan and of China and way back. And I was one of the participant of the planning for the so-called urbanization. Why is necessary? The reason because I think that China and everybody say is you have a GDP, like you have a GDP for last 30 years, double digit. And now after economic crisis globally and after 2008, if you want to retain and even 8% is a challenge. And now you already know for next 10 years, the China so-called GDP maybe is going to be decalled much, much less, and maybe will return to the so-called normal for China for next 10 years or 20 years, maybe are going to be 5%. Even everybody say 7.5% is the minimum, which you know, and I think you all should know that. China, every year you have a newborn baby. Newborn baby is like 18 million people. 18 million, that's the whole Australia, almost. So you want to keep that job open. you want to get everybody job. If your GEP not reach the point like a 7.5%, and you cannot get everybody a job. So it's a necessity and to have create a job in order to have an economic, so-called social stability. So I think in that sense, we just say, why China, in order to retain, they continue to employment, and they need the urbanization, which I think at that moment in time was the government, so-called the think tank, and people put it together in order to do the China need the urbanization. At this moment, at this time, the urbanization is about 50%. By the year of 2030, they would like to reach the urbanization about the 70-some%. And you just calculate it. If you want to keep about the population 70%, by the 2030, maybe about to reach about 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion people over there, if you want to reach the 70%, and which you just imagine, and how many people in the urban area and must survive over there. So from now until 2030, China from the 50%, and which about 650 million people, by the time of 2015 or 2030, you're going to reach the 70 people. You're talking about almost about you need 250 million people in the next 15 years. You have to move from so-called countryside to the urbanization. That's a tremendous challenge. That's the Earth in the planet is the largest so-called human engineering ever you can perform. And you're talking about a 250 million population and move from the rural area or to the urban area. But if you do not do that, if China, you don't do the urbanization, then it's very difficult to retain the economic sustainability and try to provide a job. So that was just mind-boggling. So when the time I was giving talk in Europe, I tried to give a talk, how are we going to do that in China? And in the next 15 years, and you're going to move 250 million people from the countryside to the urban side. That's a tremendous challenge. And indeed, this is a challenge. That's the reason I would like to discuss with you and see what are the possibilities. Specific AFC is which is a professional society. And I remember, and exactly about the year of 2001, December, and China's State Administration for Foreign Export Affairs, which is Mr. Li, is their office over here, and also AFC, and combined together, we went to China in Chengdu and have what we call the Western Sustainable Development Conference. That was the year of 2001. And we have that conference in 2001, in that conference over there. The reason I know about that, because later on the conference was so successful, and we have Ray Anderson. I don't know you all know Ray Anderson or not. Ray Anderson is from Atlanta, and he is the CEO of the Interface. He's the #1 in sustainable development, and he was the co-chairman of the Sustainable Development Council of the President Clinton. So he was one of the keynote speakers. And somebody from Shenzhen already know, Li Zibing was one of the co-organizers and for that conference. It was very successful, and we all very fortunately, we all were received by Wen Jiabao, and that was in the Zhongnanhai. So I actually at that time, why I remember that, because I was asked to become the dean, to consider become the dean of Peking University. That's exactly the year of 2001 and December. And actually, I became the dean and in 2002, because they asked me and they say, why when you're already here for the Sustainable Development Conference, why don't you come to Beidang to help to organize and about the college for environment science, which they tried to do 7 years, they're not able to do it. And they say, why don't you come over there? That you know, whenever you have 7 years about the dispute, about the difference over there, and they never can get together. And I'm the one they call foreign foreign monk is the one who speaks from the outside to come in. So I went over there in 3 weeks. I tried to get all the components together instead of discuss about the common difference, and we tried to discuss the common denominator. Then actually in 3 weeks, they all agreed to form the College of Environment Science. Actually, it's including the College of Design, and College of Geography, and College of Nuclear, and Environment. All those people put it together, and it was such an effort. And later on, the college actually, and we formulated the college. We actually have about 1,200 graduate students, 1,200 students. And out of that 1,200 students over there, and also maybe 60 to 70% are the graduate school. So I think actually at this moment, this time, the College of Environment Science, and it's actually doing pretty well. And I will try to give you a little bit idea about the background. But that background was the AFC, and was the state and foreign expert fair. And then I went to China, and then it became the dean. So that's the reason that the fringe benefit come from the AFC. So I would like to see the AFC is any possibility with state expert affair, and then try to do it again. And I propose try to do it is the year of 2014, the year of 2014, and try to have a conference, international conference, which I will talk about that, and our urbanization and employment. That's exactly the title. Because urbanization is the thing China is talking about it, but in the meantime, but if we don't talk about employment, economic development, it doesn't mean anything. It becomes another real estate project. So I think it's very important, tremendous challenge at this moment, this time. And when I give a talk, after in Europe, I talk about urbanization of China, then I went to Ispra in Italy. I also give a talk about urbanization of China, and which may be able to provide a solution. They call possible solution for the triple crisis the humankind are confronting. One is climate change, one is employment globally, and then number 3 is social equity, and the rich and poor, the difference. So that was the time they thinking about it. It was a very good, and I give a talk. Actually, it was a very, I was very pleased over that because, at that moment in time, the president of the European Commission actually is the president of Finland, and he was there too. And they are talking about it, and what is the world crisis? So everybody at that time think about the number 1 world crisis. It's not the problem of China, it's not the problem of the United States, it's the problem of Europe. And the reason because Europe may be collapsed. And I was the one even make the point. I said European must keep stay together, because that's the only place in the world, and they are able to have a 20-some country over there to define the standard and regulation and communicate it, and then that's a very important of the example for the rest of the world to learn how to collaborate it, how to join set up the same standard. So I was thinking about the significance of the European Commission is to develop the possibility of the codependent and the collaboration of the worldwide. Such a model, United States doesn't have. Such a model, China doesn't have. Such a model, USSR doesn't have. So if you really want to have a problem of the worldwide, they know how to collaborate instead of compete. And the good example is Europe. And the good example is not from United States, and good example is not from China. So that was the reason I was thinking about it. So I was given a talk at that time. Then I think in March, I was the one to give a talk in Macau, and as a keynote to kick off the urbanization program and for China at that time. So I'm the one in the front, I talk about urbanization in China. Then I thought my theme of the Macau, it was that China in the last 30 years, 40 years developed, like Hong Kong and Shenzhen. That kind of model cannot continue. China need to provide the job, provide the industry, provide I call soft power, management, service industry, instead of just manufacture and all those things. So that was the reason I came to talk. I said Macau could be the next 40 years, I call eco-smart city. and provide a service industry, different from Hong Kong and different from Shenzhen. Well, that kind of model for the last 30 years, it was good, but the next 40 years, that kind of model cannot continue. So I was to give a talk over there, and that was the March 20th. March the 19th, and President Xi Jinping was appointed as between the party and become the president. And then 18 and 19, and then they met with the special envoy from Macau and from Hong Kong, and just say Macau and Hong Kong continue is going to be to open the door for future example. And I was thought about it. I tried to talk about use the Macau as the future eco-smart city. And I think compare with the smart city in the Asia, the #1 developed smart city is not in China. It's in Korea, it's in Seoul. If anybody know about that, they spent about $100-some billion over there trying to develop the so-called smart city. And that is kind of a model, and I would think about China and need to try to develop and to generate a job. So I was giving a talk over there, and then suddenly I find out after I give a talk, and then I find out the Macau people and really say, hey, we're not ready to do that. I said, I was invited, you guys asked me to give a talk, I give you a vision, which later on I will recommend, I will show you. And it was published in the Economic Daily. They all think it's a great idea. The idea is very simple. It's because Xi Jinping just visited in the South. Because he became the new president in the South, he actually followed that they called the Deng Xiaoping, and in the 1979, or this and come to the South. And then the whole economic development started off. So Xi Jinping started to go to the South to visit, and then instead of Macau, is the frontier of the Pearl River Delta, and then they took a new golden triangle in Pearl River Delta. In Nanshan, in Shenzhen, in Qianhai, in Zhuhai, are become the new golden triangle. So that's even say that Qianhai is the place they want to become the Manhattan of China. So the whole thing, suddenly you find out the people talk about urbanization in China, and then you find out the new leader come. And even he just say, hey, I'm going to have a different idea. So I thought about immediately, I thought, God, I better go back to learn what's going on. So I went from Macau and to Beijing for 1 month. And then I will give you a little bit of my experience about so-called urbanization in China at this moment, this time. And I can tell you, China have not figured out exactly the way to go for the urbanization. And I will give you a little bit background, and then later on we can discuss. So the talk I prepared on that actually is the summary of those 3 talks, which I give in Europe, and give in Italy, and also give in Macau. So I will go give you a little bit background. This is the talk, the year of 2001 in Chengdu, in which Ray Anderson was presented, Li Zibing, and all those people, AFC people, we were there. At that moment, that time, Ray Anderson asked the question, which is which? He called, is the big circle is the environment, or the square is the environment, or the square is economic, or circle is environment. So he thought, which is which? At that moment, the year of 2001, when he gave the keynote speech over there, all the governors from the West, governor, all the people, party secretary, leader, and all those things, they all say, hey, the small circle definitely is environment. The big square is definitely is economic. The reason because everybody say China, and we develop economic first, and then we try to deal with the environment. So at that moment, that time, very simple. And which one is which? The small circle is environment, and the big square is economic. But in the meantime, I would like to give you a little bit, and the way we talk about that is, do you know in the last 50 years, and the population, human population increased. And like between 1950 and then the 2006, the number among the people increased. It's greater than all the number of population we ever had from the Adam and Eve until the last one and still alive. Which means the population and for 50 years increase is greater than all human history. And that's number one phenomenon. Number two phenomenon is economic growth. The GDP of 1 year, or the year of 2000, is greater than whole century, 19th century. You add all 100 years together, the GDP is not as big as 1 year of GDP increase. So what that means, very simple. You cannot explain the history of economic development linearly, extrapolation. The whole phenomenon is like a hockey stick, hockey step. They exponentially increase, exponentially increase. So anything about all the things about the number of the population is exponential increase. The total of the GDP and often exponential increase, and also foreign and direct investment, or that the number of the debt and all those things. And I even give you some of the example of the last one over there. Number of McDonald's, increase even much sharper. Yeah, totally is linearly exploration, which means what? If you want to forecast the next year, you don't know how to forecast. It's not linearly, you cannot extrapolate it. Everything exponentially increase. So that is the phenomena which face the human being. It's not just China. That's the 50 years. I have about this whole program over there. It's not come from me. It's come from Paul Crutzen. He called, this is the time, the whole human being are changing the human history. They call Anthropocene, which means that all our human history about the whole things changing, and the most drastically is human being have done that. He called Anthropocene, which means the human being are changed the earth. He made this presentation in Brussels. That was the reason I could talk in the Brussels. He did it in the year of 2001, and I went to the Brussels actually 10 years later. So because of that, and suddenly we realized our economic and the environment and the development must be like the circle and like the big square. You must develop together simultaneously. But even that, you think about the challenge. How are you going to put the square? How are you going to put the circle in a square? And how are you going to fit the square in the circle? It doesn't matter, they are same size, same big. It's a challenge. And I don't believe that's an easy task. So that's what we are human beings are confronting now. That's the overall background. That the background is human history. So which means the Industrial Revolution, where we talk about the first Industrial Revolution is the environmental impact, is directly proportional to the population and to the affluence of the society in the meantime, and proportional to the technology. The technology is current technology, is linearly, fossil fuel driven, diffusive, wasteful, and focused on the labor productivity. That's the first Industrial Revolution. In order to face the whole new challenge, the mindset must be changed. So we talk about the 21st century, in order to put the technology over there, instead of the proportional and to our affluence over there, it must be put in the denominator. Which means, and must be efficient technology, biomimicry, hydrogen economy, solar and renewable energy, etc. So that was top. Actually, this is the top. 2001, the conference by AFC and also by Foreign Ex Affairs, we did that. That was 11 years ago. Now, I think that what I want to say is now our whole world is confronting two. One is the economic global depression. Actually, instead of which our global depression, it seems like we're recovering. The United States seems like a recovery. And China and still are trying to recovering. And Europe is the first time in the last 20-some months, first time they have a positive growth. First time in the last 24 months. They all contraction, all the economic. So the whole global economic depression and climate change, if anybody still don't believe the climate change is for real, how warm they are, this is the decade and have harvested and time, and before China doesn't believe it. And now with the summer, and everybody finally, they believe it, and the heat wave in China and hurt more than ever. And I think that people say, you don't have to cook anymore, and because it's self-baked. and everything. If I find out the people in Beijing or in the south part of China, and very difficult. The average temperature in Shanghai is more than 40 centigrade, and just like the southwest of the United States, and we reach the temperature, and it could reach about 140 and some degree. So the warm temperature, Atlanta is one of the places which is the best in the whole country, in the whole place. And do you know how hot it's in New York in the last few weeks? And over there, it's unbearable. So if anybody want to come, they say come down to Atlanta. So we try to sell the real estate in Atlanta, even they are so deprived. And so if anybody want to come, you never know. You want to come and to Atlanta, spend your summer. And which because it's the coolest summer we ever have. And because it's raining all the time. And that's one of the things about the amount of water. And if anybody don't believe it, I believe it. Because I went to Antarctic, and I find out all the ice sheets are really melting. I think by next 2 years, 2 or 3 years, you may not see any ice sheet in the Antarctic anymore. So that's the time. When all the water evaporated. All the water evaporated, and they are all over the world. So you find out all the water due to the ice sheet and all those things, they're all in the atmosphere. They're going to dump somewhere, somehow. Okay? And how you dump it, it's not how you dump it, because we always try to avoid 100-year flood plan, 50-year plan. And nowadays, the whole thing come out is human history. We never have any experience like that. How are we going to forecast? How are we going to do that? That actually, I talked to you about this phenomenon is a new business opportunity, and I will try to talk about it. How we're going to create a new job, it's new insurance, and the reason because risk management for climate change is one of the most potential new area to develop new job. Anyway, I give it this, and then in the meantime, I think that one thing I add on that, and I think we all need to pay attention. Do you know, and all the problem, we all talk about the biodiversity, but we never talk about cultural diversity. Do you recognize it? In the last 200 years, the culture dominated, and in the Western society, in our current world, is one culture, Western culture dominant. So if you really think about everybody say Chinese culture for 5,000 years, but they are not major driver. The only thing people know about the China is Chinese food. And then now they know a little bit more about Kung Fu and all those kind of things. But if you really think about culturally, that's not the case. India, that's not the case. If we have cultural diversity, then we are not going to have a war like Iraq. Then we show our enough respect for the different culture, different civilization, that we maybe can minimize our possibility of the war, which we maybe cannot confront to face it. So cultural diversity is one of the most important thing I think for this century, and our human being needed to look into it. So, and I think I give you a little bit idea about the China. If we talk about it, you talk about China on urbanization, I will give you a talk. Everybody say last 30, 40 years, and China developed, and they have the largest foreign reserve. If in any place they have the money nowadays in the world, Chinese still have the money. Okay, I think the money itself, later on, I really think, we try to say, everybody say now, the current, the bank, and very tight, but I really believe China is planning something, and they are going to do it, and after the November meeting. So after November meeting, I really believe, and the major stimulus plan from China is going to come. The amount of money, and they're going to put in there, is on urbanization, already budgeted. And each of the year about the budget is about 100 billion. So more than $100 million over there or there. So China, the major funding for $300 to $500 billion is going to put in the urbanization in order to keep this economic sustainable. So that's their national policy. Can they implement it? Can they do it? There are a lot of complications. That's the reason I would like to have a chance, have some discussion with you. I personally, I don't believe China is going to have a very clear plan after this fall. and they call 三中全会. After this fall, China is going to lay out the new financial plan, even though all other newspaper and all our Google News and everywhere, it's a China is in deep trouble and a bank and have a budget problem and all those things. I don't think so. I think they are waiting. They use this time to tie up a lot of debts. But in the meantime, after November, they have a new plan. But how they going to carry the new economic plan, new stimulus plan, I think that's the one thing the rest of the world, we all need to watch out. The reason because how dare to do, how much they can do it. Because China in one thing is different from anybody else think about China. China have more than 400 million people in the microblock. That's some kind of thing you cannot control. That's some of the things you cannot control. And the word spread so fast. At this moment in time, even the new leader of China must try to watch out what is the survey, what are the public opinion. The reason because 400 million of the microblock. If you have 400 million microblock, everybody talk. And they are much more dangerous even than the United States. The United States, we don't have that much population. If you have a Chinese population for 400 million of them, they all own the microblock. Who can manage it? I think that's a challenge. Okay, how are you going to make the people to make the change? And I think so at this moment in time, even the leader of China are trying to watch the poll about how the reaction for the population, all those things, which had never happened that before. And so in some sense, it's going to happen. But in China, you have to realize that they have more than 22% of the population, but in the meantime, they only have 1/3 of the cultivated land per capita. They only have about 1/4 of the water per capita, 1/5 of the forest service, 1/10 of the oil and per capita, and 1/27 of the natural gas. So in the meantime, the consumption is about 1/8 of the world, 44% of the cement, 31% of the coal, and 31% of the crude steel, 25% aluminum. And then in the meantime, the GDP is only 6.6%. What that means, very simple, it's very inefficient. Chinese need to start to changing themselves and optimization of their resource, which is necessary. How they're going to make that happen, I think is a challenge. And that kind of challenge is confronting the China at this point. And then in the meantime, the population distribution now, 50% in the urban area, 650 million. By the 30, 40, 75% population, so more than 1 billion is going to be in the urban area. So you talk about 350 million people is going to move from the rural area to the urban area. I think this is the largest human engineering you ever see, ever in history. And can make it or cannot make it is the challenge for us to watch. So, and anyway, so the new modernization is they are going to do that. They are going to generate a small medium business and create more job and cause more money flow and leads to economic security. That's the key reason they wanted the urbanization. The opportunity and challenge, and I try to use at this moment in time because I'm the one running the U.S.-China low carbon city. And that was the year 2009 when Obama was in China, and I was the chair of the low carbon city between the United States and China. And then the year of 2009, and we did in Washington, D.C. So I was running the U.S.-China low carbon city. And then you never realize that, when the U.S.-China get together, the one who want the money, who need the money, is not from the China, from the Chinese mayors. All the mayors from the United States. Mayor Daley, at that time, I was watching over there, and I even met with Governor Jerry Brown, and Jerry Brown said, I'm not shy to ask money from China. Because all the local city government and all those things, they all need money. But the last 2 or 3 years, city and the state does not draw enough tax and to pay for the local. They are different from the central government. Central government, even you have a lot of debts, you can print the money to solve some of the problem. But the local government is a serious problem. So in order to really to address the new challenge global, I think U.S.-China collaboration almost necessary. That one of the things I personally involved, and I wanted you everybody and try to know that the year of the last year in Hillary Clinton visit China, and we already put the one thing in the agenda, which between U.S.-China we need to work together. How are we going to put the urbanization, city development between U.S.-China? And we propose to establish U.S.-China Joint Institute for Green Building and Sustainable Neighborhood. We picked one city at that time as the model city to start with. That's Wuxi. And the United States, the one who chaired that is the Bill McDonald. And I don't know you all know Bill McDonald or not. He's the one that was the dean of the Virginia and the University of Virginia. He was the one who planned all the rooftop of the Ford motor and sustainable development. And he was the chairman for the United States. And in China, the chairperson, chairlady is Deng Nan. Deng Nan is the daughter of Deng Xiaoping, and he was the deputy minister of science and technology. So that was the first prototype. Then that was in May the 3rd, and we discussed that. And then in July, and in Nanjing, a meeting, and we decided the Minister of Science and Technology, I was present over there, and we are trying to propose the year of 20, and this year, actually between the Kerry and also U.S.-China and joint development is going to discuss the possibility of the joint collaboration between the United States and China, as we call U.S.-China Joint Institute for Green Building and Community Neighborhood Development between U.S.-China. Actually, we discussed roughly the framework in China, about 5 different regions, and also in the United States too, like Northeast and Northwest and Bay Area and Big Lake and San Antonio and Austin, Texas, and the Southeast. And in China, about 5 different regions in Bohai Bay Area and Changjiang Delta, and also Pearl River Delta, and Central China and Southwest China. So we're going to pair together. You're going to see this is going to be on the agenda between U.S.-China. Even this year, after Obama and Xi Jinping, they met in California, and then later on, they have first meeting in Washington, D.C., and which did not talk too much. The reason